Galatians chapter 6. Once you've got your Bible, Galatians chapter 6, you can open up there. And we will get started. And Galatians chapter 6. See if our clicker's working tonight. Seems to be working so far. I'll show you the breakdown here real quick. It's got two main divisions in chapter 6. This is the last chapter of the book. Verses 1 to 10, I titled Sharing. And then verses 11 through 18, Showing. Sharing and showing. And of course, we will pick it up in verse 1 in the first section there about sharing. Now, Paul has been writing to the Galatians. This is one of the books it has one theme in it. There's one main point that Paul's got. And his main point is to reject legalism. That means trying to become righteous or in good standing by following the Old Testament law. And he's telling them, reject legalism and focus on Jesus or depend on Jesus. Because you had a group of the Christians there in Galatia that were getting wrapped up in legalism, and there are some bad things that happen when you get wrapped up in legalism. There's a lot of judgment that takes place. And Paul here in this final chapter is telling them we cannot be that way. And that'll become very apparent, clear in the very first verse as we get into this section. So sharing, Galatians 6 verses 1 through 10. And the first thing that he's going to tell them is to share burdens, verses 1 to 5. Let's take a look at it. Verse 1, brethren or brothers, and this is applicable to the ladies also. It's not just the guys. But brethren, if a person is overtaken in any trespass. So we're dealing here with an individual who was overtaken by sin. Okay? Somebody has either chosen or they've fallen into sin. That's what the word trespass means. They've trespassed against God. So we're dealing here with people that have sinned. Now I'll stop there for just a moment, and I want you to self-assess. And you think about yourself and how you would deal with somebody, a Christian that you know of, that has fallen into sin. How would you normally deal with them? What's the first thought that comes to your mind? Now, don't answer out loud. We'll find out what we're supposed to do right now. But we always want to self-assess as we're going through these scriptures. Okay, how do I do this? But how is it supposed to be done? Which is obviously what we're finding out here. Now, he's telling them, brethren, if a person is overtaken in any trespass, again, in any sin, overtaken, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. Now, Paul's focus here, okay, in this last chapter, now it still has to do with legalism, either being legalistic or living by grace. Okay, we want to live by grace, the grace of God. But what he's doing is he's actually focusing this final chapter. He begins here in verse 1 by focusing on those people in the church that had not fallen into legalism. They had not given into legalism. They understood the grace of God, and they were still living by the grace of God, depending on the grace of God. They understood salvation is by faith alone, and you're saved by grace through faith, and that is through Jesus. We place our faith in Jesus, okay? So they understood that. So he's actually writing to them directly. That's what he means by you who are spiritual. He means those of you that are not depending on the flesh, not depending on the Old Testament laws, you're still living by grace. And what's happening now is by the time he gets to this 6th chapter, his assumption is that those who were caught up in the legalism, that they now see 5 chapters later, we really need to give up this legalism thing. And so as they're giving up their legalism, they're now coming to their senses and going, man, you know what? We need to live by grace. This legalism thing, this is not the business. This is not how it should work. Now, as those individuals, as they reject legalism, now they're turning back to their church body, their brothers, their sisters. And they're saying, hey, we want to give up this legalism thing, and we want to come back into the fold, man. We want to be in right standing with all of you. And so he's telling the rest of the church, those that have not fallen into legalism, that are about to receive those people back, he's saying, those of you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. Now, we'll talk about the gentleness part in just a minute. We'll talk about considering yourself, and we'll talk about what those mean. But I want you to understand the first thing that Paul is saying is you need to restore those individuals. Now, this is a general biblical principle that you and I, whenever we have a brother or sister, and what I mean by brother or sister in this context is a Christian, another Christian, whether it's a guy or whether it's a girl, a brother or sister, if they have sinned, but now they're wanting to come back into the fold, they want to get back into right standing with their brothers and sisters, and they go, hey, listen, I realized what I was doing was wrong, and now I'm back, and I want to get back to the good old days and how it used to be. That is where you and I, who maybe haven't left, maybe we've still been following the Lord, but that is where you and I, we want to restore them. Now, what does it mean to restore something? We're living in a day and age of DIY, right? DIY channels all over the place, and everybody restores cars and old soda machines and restaurants and houses and bathrooms, and everybody restores everything. So we understand the concept. Whatever it was that was old, let's make it new again. And so that's the idea here, is that those individuals in the church that haven't fallen into legalism, that what they need to do with those people that are coming out of the legalism is restore them. Now, I'm making a big deal about that because, and I asked you a question at the very beginning, how would you normally respond to a Christian that's been living in sin, but now they're trying to come back? I asked you that because we, Christians, have been called, it's been said about the Christians that we're the only military in the world that shoots its wounded. Every other military in the world, they got wounded people, wounded soldiers. They're trying to drag their fellow soldiers to safety, trying to get them out. You ever heard the phrase, no man left behind? Okay? Military goes in, they don't want to leave anybody behind. Somebody gets shot, they're grabbing that soldier and they're trying to get him out. And it's been said about us that we're the only military that we have somebody wounded in our flock, in our fold, and we'll just shoot them and just chop them down. And it's so easy to do. Some Christian that's fallen into sin, now they're trying to come back in, and they're already broken, they're already wounded, they're already hurt, and then they come back to us, and we can so easily wag our finger at them, and you know what, you're just, you're less than, you're not really a good Christian like I am, because I've been here the whole time, and you left, and we so often can do that. We can get so judgy, right? We can get so judgy. We can become so judgmental against those people. And what Paul is saying is, no, you need to restore those people. Bring them back in, help them get back on their feet, spiritually speaking, and help them to move forward from that point. They made a mistake. They've acknowledged it. Now help them to move forward. Now he tells them how to do it. He says that we need to do that in a spirit of gentleness. In a spirit of gentleness. Some of you have broken bones. Okay, I've not broken any bones. I think of all the dumb things I've done in my life. I can't believe I've never broken a bone. But when you've broken a bone, those of you that have broken bones will know this. That oftentimes, I've heard stories, you go to the doctor and you got this broken bone, and the doctor will grab that thing, if it's an arm, and just kind of like, okay, well, we got to reset it, and they'll just grab it and start yanking on that thing, or your leg, or, your toe, whatever, whatever it is. And, you wish that they would do that with gentleness, right? We don't want to be rough with our brothers and sisters, especially if they're just returning from having fallen into some sin. And they're coming back. We want to do that with gentleness, with love. Gentleness, love. He goes on to say in verse 1, he cautions us, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. So if I'm in the middle of restoring some sinning brother or sister, I want to do that with gentleness. I want to love them back into the flock. Love them back into the flock, into the fold. But I also want to be careful that I not get caught up in that same thing. Now, again, remember that Paul is writing to Galatians about legalism. And so to them, he's specifically saying, listen, if somebody's been caught up in legalism and now they're returning, they've realized that this is not right. I got to depend on Jesus only. And now they're coming back and saying, yeah, I did something wrong, that you need to restore them with gentleness, but you also need to be careful that you not get wrapped up in the same thing. So consider yourself, lest you also be tempted. That's what he means. And then here, he says in verse 2, bear one another's burdens. That's where I got my title there. Bear one another's burdens, number 1. Bear one another's burdens. That means you help them, you come alongside of them, and you help them lift their load. So somebody's carrying something heavy, real simple example. Somebody's carrying something heavy, you come to their rescue, you come and help them out. Hey, let me take half of that, let me help you out. That's the same idea. If a Christian is burdened, man, because they've been caught up in sin, and now they're like, I want to repent, I want to get right, we need to come alongside of them and help them out. Not push them down, kick them, laugh at them, tell them how many things they did wrong. You know how that goes, right? Some of you are athletes, and sometimes, I just saw it this weekend at a college game. 2 weekends ago, at a college game. A young lady that at the end of the game, she did fantastic, but she came, this is not my daughter, by the way, but she came off the field. Not that my daughter doesn't do fantastic. That sounded bad. Sorry. But this is another player. She came off the field, and she was visibly upset. In other words, she was crying because she had done something in the game, played a phenomenal game, but made one mistake. And what did Dad mention? Dad had to mention that one mistake, didn't he? He had to mention that one mistake. And, sometimes parents are like that. God bless them. I mean, I'm a parent, and sometimes we mess up. We say the wrong things, it's just, you'll get there. Don't worry. You'll have kids and you'll say the wrong things sometimes. But we want to do, with gentleness, but we want to come alongside that individual who's hurting and help lighten the load, not make it heavier. Bear one another's burdens. And then he says this is so strange, sounds so odd. Bear one another's burdens in verse 2 and so fulfill the law of Christ. The law of Christ. You're like, wait a minute, I thought we were trying to get away from the law. What does he mean by the law of Christ? I am so glad you asked. So glad that you asked. Let me show you. Let me show you what he means. In John 13, verses 34 through 35, this is Jesus speaking. He says, a new commandment I give to you. You go, wait a minute, I thought we were like over the commandments. I thought we weren't about the law. No, the commandments, the law is good. What we're saying is you cannot be righteous by doing that. You can't be, there's no way to fulfill the law perfectly. But Jesus here, when he was on earth, gave a new commandment. He says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. Ouch. Unconditional, self-sacrificial love. That's the kind of love Jesus has. He says that you also love one another that same way. By this will all know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another. That is going to be an earmark. That is going to be an indicator that you and I belong to Jesus if we love one another. So I was 20 years old, man, a long time ago. I had just gotten saved. I was at San Bernardino Valley College. I had tried sharing the gospel with my group of friends, and they rejected it. So I distanced myself from them, and I went to school. And it was a junior college, Valley College. I went to school, horror of all horrors. I went to school without any friends. I know, right? Devastating. But it was me and Jesus at that point. It was like, you know what? I miss my friends, but this Jesus life, man, this is a good thing. And what I soon found was a small group of Christians on the campus that were meeting weekly for Bible studies. And I went. And these Christians were so weird, so nerdy, I walked in, you know, my baggy Dickies and Vans or Adidas or whatever I was wearing, and earrings in my ears, and a, you know, earring in my nose and my hair, however it looked, you know. I walk in, you know, and it's like all these people were in there, all their clothes fit the right way. It was like, what is that, you know? There was a black guy in there, one. His name was Clarence. Clarence, okay? And this group of Christians ended up becoming my friends. Sweet, sweet people, sweet Jesus people. And I walked in there, and you know what? I'm looking like, oh my gosh, like what's wrong with these people? Like, oh, you know, their clothing and whatever else. You know what? They never said anything to me about my earrings, my piercings, my baggy clothes. They never said anything. They were just glad that I was there. They were just glad that I was there. They were loving one another. And we would see each other on campus. And I still remember one time I was walking, and there was a couple of young ladies that I was walking with, and we were going to class or whatever, and I saw Clarence. Hey, Clarence, how you doing? Yeah, good, all right. See you at the Bible study? Yeah, see you at the Bible study. And we always said to each other was, okay, God bless you, man. Okay, God bless you. And after we parted, one of the young ladies is like, what did you say to him? I was like, we said a bunch of things. No, did you say God bless you? Yeah. And she thought that that was the strangest thing. She had never heard people say God bless you to each other before. She couldn't understand the connection, the love that we had for one another. She couldn't understand it. That's an earmark for us. Listen, Fusion, high school, we have to, this cannot be the Chris Amaro show, okay? This can't be, I cannot be the only one here that, you know, is going to love one another and, you know, do those things. If this thing is going to be effective here, this Wednesday night deal, you've got to jump in there and love one another also. This has to be a place where people come in and they're already feeling a little awkward because, man, I don't really know if I know anybody, and they're kind of looking around and a little hesitant, a little nervous, a little scared. Somebody has got to approach those individuals. You don't know, if you don't recognize somebody, then go over and say hi. Somebody has got to be doing that. It can't be just the leaders. The leaders are doing it. They're making their way around and, you know, saying hi to people. But you also have to do that. Everybody knows. Everybody here, you guys know better than we do what it's like to, you know, show up somewhere and there's cliques, right? And I hear that all the time about church and about youth. Oh, you know, my son or daughter, they didn't want to go there anymore. It's too many cliques. Too many cliques. We hear that all the time. Now listen, you're going to have your group of friends. Everybody's got their group of friends. I get it. You're going to hang out with one another, you know, in your group. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But are you willing to receive other people in? You see somebody, you know, a young lady, oh, hey, what's your name? Well, come over here. You know, you can tell when somebody feels out of place. Hey, come on over here. Talk with us for a little bit. Hang out. We have to be that kind of a youth group because evidently, according to Jesus, when we love one another, imagine that's how people will know that we are his disciples. If somebody comes in here and they're experiencing rejection because of the way they look or the way they talk or the way they act or what they have on or, you know, whatever it is, then we're doing something wrong. It cannot, if that's the case, it's better that we just shut the door, lock it up, shut the lights off, let's not even meet. But if we're going to be here, let's be Jesus-like. That's what he said. By this, all will all know that you are my disciples. I mean, I want people to know that I'm his disciple. That's the whole point. I mean, that's all I got, really. I don't have anything else. That's it. I'm only his disciple. That's all I have. And so I want individuals to know that. And one of the big ways that they're going to know that is if I'm loving my brothers and my sisters. So we have to do that. It is an imperative. Let's move on because what he tells us after sharing burdens, verses 3 through 5, the remaining, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm going to leave that sitting there for a minute. I forgot to read verses 3 through 5. Let me read that. For if anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone and not in another, for each one shall bear his own load. Now, what's he talking about there in those verses? He's telling, now remember, he's just finished telling the people, listen, make sure that you check yourself. Make sure you're not getting caught up in that sin also. He says in verse 3, for if anyone thinks himself to be something, so if you get lofty, if you start thinking, if you're prideful and you start thinking about how great you are, if anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he's lying to himself. That's, come on, that's our society, man. That's what they're promoting. That's what they're telling us to do. Like, you gotta promote yourself, and you gotta put yourself out there, and you gotta, make yourself, great, and all these other things. And Paul is saying, listen, you just understand there's a balance that, I really, apart from Christ, I'm nothing. I got nothing, and I'm not trying to deceive myself. So he's talking to those individuals saying, make sure that you stay humble, gentle, love your brothers and sisters. Don't think that you're something great. We're nothing. Don't deceive yourself. But let each one examine his own work. What does that mean? It means whatever God has called you to do that. The disciples, there were times where they would go, well, Peter one time, and he's like, well, Jesus is telling him this is what's going to happen, Peter. Oh, his response, well, what about John? Jesus says, that's none of your business. I'm telling you. You don't have to worry about all of that. Just all you got to be concerned with is what I'm telling you. I remember telling my kids that when they were younger, right? You know how little kids are. I'm sure none of you ever did it because you were perfect kids. But something's going on, with you and your siblings, and one of your parents tells you something, and what do? Well, what about him? Well, how come she doesn't have to vacuum? Well, how come he doesn't have to do laundry? And I would tell my kids, that's none of your business. I would tell them, that's not your kid. That's my kid. You're not their parent. Tell them, so why don't you just do what I'm telling you to do before I take their job and give it to you too? Listen, just whatever God's called you to do, just do that. Don't worry about, I'm running around and, trying to judge everybody else for what they're doing and not doing. You just examine yourself, okay? Verse 4, but let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone and not in another. You see, the legalists were all about measuring themselves. Well, I'm doing the law of God. Are you doing the law of God? And they could always look over and check, because you have this like, well, I'm doing these three things. Are you doing these three things? He's saying don't get caught up in that in verse 4. Examine yourself. Just all you got to do is do what God's called you to do. Verse 5, for each one shall bear his own load. Meaning, you just, all you need to be concerned with is, again, what you're doing. That's all you're going to do. That's all that's required of you. Your ministry is not to run around and check what everybody else is doing. Your ministry is to serve the Lord in whatever capacity that is. So, you just, all you got right now, if you don't know what God's called you to do, then you just do your best to keep following him. Just be obedient to him. The things that you learn in the Bible studies or in your own personal Bible study, you just do your best to be obedient to those. When God's ready, he'll make your calling clear. He'll tell you, hey, this is what I want you to do, or sometimes he'll just direct you. And then afterwards you'll realize, like, oh, I guess this is where God called me. Because there wasn't some bright, shiny light, and there wasn't an audible voice saying, please, calling Pastor Chris, to the front. This is what I need you to do. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes he's just directing you as you're serving him. He's just directing you. So you just focus on serving the Lord, okay? Now, verses 6 through 10, he says, share the blessings. Verse 6, let him who is taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches. Now, this is very interesting because I'm teaching, so I really like this part. Let him who is taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches. What is he? He changes directions a little bit because he's coming to the close of his letter. Okay? And so he's now talking to individuals in the church and saying, I'm going to tell you what he's saying. He's saying, support your teacher. That's what he's saying. If you are learning the Bible from somebody, he's saying, support that individual. That's what he's saying. Let him who is taught. Now, in this setting right now where you and I are at currently at 7:48 on a Wednesday night, October, whatever it is, in this setting, I would be the teacher. You would be those that are taught. Okay? So, it's quite applicable here. Let him who is taught the word, okay, so that would be you, if you're taught the word, share in all good things with him who teaches. So that would be me, him who teaches. What are you supposed to do? Share in all good things. Now, I can say that he is talking about financial, about paying the teacher. That's what he's saying. But I like that he says share in all good things with him who teaches, because not everybody has money. And I mean, come on. I'm talking to a room full of broke high school students, right? Some of you have jobs. Some of you get a little bit of money. You get cash from different places. But some of you, right, you're broke. You don't have, your parents give you money. That's how it is. That's how it goes. Until you start earning your own money, which is a good thing, but you don't have money. So what can you do to support your teacher? What can you do? Then you look for other ways that you can give. Then you look for other ways that you can support that individual. In this case, in this context, if you do not have the money, that's fine. Even if you do have the money, I really don't want it. If you've got money, then what we do is we can give money to the church, because then the church leaders, they dispense that as needed. Okay, that's how it works here. But if you do not have money to give, what do you have to give? Do you have time? Do you have some service that you can give? Then you show up and you serve. You look for opportunities to serve. And let me tell you the best way. Now, this is this just came to me, but I mentioned it a few weeks ago. On the back counter, there actually is an info sheet with how to serve in the high school room. Okay? But I'll tell you an even better way than that. Okay? Even easier, even more practical. Find somebody that is serving and then do the same thing. Find somebody that is serving. Find a leader that is serving and then go take it from them. I don't mean take it from them as in competition. What I mean is find somebody, and the best way to assist a leader, especially a busy leader, is to watch them, follow them around if you have to, pay attention, okay, here's what they're doing, and then tell them, hey, let me do that for you. You go do something else. That's the best way to serve. Find somebody who's serving and then do the same thing. And that goes for, that really is general. It's a general biblical principle. But, that's generally speaking. If you have a leader, you got a mom or a dad, they're busy. Now, maybe when you see them at the end of the day, maybe they're sitting down on their recliner or their couch and they're just watching TV, and you're looking at them like, man, you're just living the life, like you don't really do anything. No, they're sitting there because they're exhausted, okay, from the day, whatever it was, business at the bank or out, whatever they were doing. But even them, watch them, see what they do, and then go take it from them. That was always one of my favorite things to do with a friend of mine named John at the church that I was at previously. He was a children's pastor. And if there was the fall festival going on, he was in charge of that. Or if it was VBS, he was in charge of that. And the guy was just a monster when it came to serving. He just wanted to do everything. And when you're in charge of something, you're in charge of VBS and a toilet's overflowing, everybody comes to tell you, like you don't have anything to do. And he would want to go over there and go get the plunger and plunge the toilet, and I'd follow him around, and I would just say, no, hey, I'll do that. You go talk with the kids. I'll go plunge the toilet, or whatever they're asking you to do is a mess or something broke or whatever. Go ahead, man. Go. I'll take care of that for you. And I used to love doing that for my friend John, my good friend John. So do the same thing. Find somebody that's serving, and then start doing the same thing. Let him who is taught the word share in all good things with him who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Sound familiar? For whatever a man sows, whatever a person sows, that he will also reap. What is he talking about? Don't be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever you sow is going to grow. Whatever you sow is going to grow. When he says sow, he's talking about sowing seeds. Now, I have had some gardens over the years, and you put your seeds in the ground. You put some corn in the ground. Guess what? Corn grows. I know. Right? You don't get, turnips from that. I've grown pumpkins. You put pumpkin seeds in the ground, pumpkins grow. You don't get radishes from that. Whatever you sow is going to grow. And in this context, what Paul is telling them is, listen, he's saying, when you support your Bible teacher, then whatever you give, if you give generously, you're going to reap generously. If you give, if you're stingy when you give, then you're not going to reap very much. So he's telling them, be generous with whatever it is that you're giving. Whether it's money or whether it's whatever it is, be generous with that. Whatever you sow is going to grow. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption, in verse 8. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. So if you're sowing to the flesh, you're going to reap corruption. Okay? If I'm sowing sinful seeds, then guess what's going to come up, family? Whatever I sow is going to grow. So if I'm sowing sin, sin's going to grow. That's the way it works. However, if I'm sowing to the Spirit, then the Spirit is going to grow. The spiritual things are going to grow. But this is again, it's plain to see. If you invest your life into sinful things, then the only thing sin can do is produce corruption. Sin may be fun for a little while, may taste good, feel good, smell good, look good, but it is going to end in corruption. Paul said, bodily exercise profits a little. He did say that. Okay? And bodily exercise is a good thing. It's a good thing. But you can do all that you want to better your body. It's still getting older. And eventually, all of that stuff is going to head south. Because the sands of time, they do fall down. They don't go up. And you might get all the muscle, or you might get, you're fit and you spend all your time in the gym, man, and you're just looking good, but you're still going to get old. You're still going to wrinkle. Your body is still corrupting. Listen, bodily exercise is a good thing. But just understand, I'm doing all this, but I'm still going to die. The body's still rotting. That's what the body's doing. Okay? Right now, you're young, you're vibrant, you feel like, oh man, you know what? You look good, and you all that stuff. But one of these days, you're gonna look like this. It's just going downhill. Okay? It's going downhill. It seems like you're going uphill, like you're just getting better. In reality, you've already been at your best. Okay? And it's just going downhill. Bodily exercise profits a little. You sow to the flesh, you're going to reap corruption. But listen. Focus on the spiritual. Again, it's okay. Go to the gym. Do it. But make sure that you're focusing on the spiritual at the same time. Because you want to make sure that you are listening to what he says. He says you're going to reap everlasting life. Everlasting life. Everlasting life. That's pretty incredible. And let us, in verse 9, not grow weary while doing good. Don't grow weary while doing good. Don't get all weary because you're supporting your Bible teacher. For in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Don't quit. Keep going. If you're sowing spiritual, keep going. You're gonna reap. Verse 10, this is where we'll stop. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all. Okay? Let us do good to all. And then look at this. Especially to those who are of the household of faith. So we ought to be a blessing to everybody outside of these doors, outside of this little brown shoebox that we're in. We ought to be a blessing to everybody that we come across. But we ought to especially be a blessing to those that are inside this little brown shoebox that we're in. We better make sure that this is, that these things that we're learning, that we're putting them into practice here first, especially. That we're caring for one another first or especially. It's okay to care for all the other people out there. That's a good thing. But some people get caught up. They get wrapped up in trying to care for just everybody in the entire world. It's clear here. He just told us, let us do good to all. Okay, it's a good, let me just do good to everybody, especially to those who are of the household of faith. That means the Christians, my brothers and my sisters. All right? Father, thank you so much for tonight. And we are praying that